So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first mentoring webinar in the Accelerating Women in METS mentoring program, which is the Fostering a Sustainable Mining, a Community Mine Approach. My name's Claire Chakrabarty, and I'm the manager of the Accelerating Women in METS program. I'm joined here today by three METS industry leaders. We have, we have Leonie Yan from Sentient Computing, Jessica Zakaria from K2Fly, and Courtney Bailey from Viconic. And they're going to share some insights into what their company and them have been doing to create a more sustainable mining for the future, and also about their own career journeys. Before we begin, I want to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians and the various lands on which we meet today. For me, here in Brisbane, that's the Yagara and Turrbal people. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting and acknowledge their continuing connections to these lands and waters. I pay my respects to all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to extend this respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders who are joining us on the call here today. So before we begin, as this is the first webinar in the series, I just wanted to provide everybody with a brief overview of who Osmine are, in case anybody hasn't heard of us before. I did see from looking at the registrations, and I'm rather excited to say we've got some new people who haven't been involved in any of the programming before, so I just wanted to provide this introduction. So Osmine is the leading industry body for the METS sector, which is the mining, equipment, technology and services sector. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and we exist to promote the global advancement of technology and innovation in mining, with over 700 corporate members around the country. And the Accelerating Women in METS programme is an initiative managed by Osmine and sponsored by the Commonwealth Government's Women in STEM and Entrepreneurship, or WISE programme. The aim of the Women in METS is to encourage STEM students to consider a career in the METS sector. We want to build a community of METS sector champions, and we want to provide some practical experience. So some of you may have already seen the paid internships that are offered as part of this programme, and we currently still have some internships being advertised on the Hot Rubble Connect platform. At the end of the webinar, I'm going to provide some links. So if you are interested in those internship opportunities, or you want to find out more about the programme in general, you can click through on those links and find out some opportunities. The Accelerating Women in METS programme is also really keen on building awareness about the METS sector. And we really are committed to providing support for students so that you can see the myriad of possibilities that the METS sector offers. And I'm hoping that through today's presentations, you can learn a little bit more about the exciting things that are happening in the METS sector right now and some of those opportunities that could be for you in your future. The mentoring programme will consist of 4 sessions over the next 12 months, this one being the first one. Each session will have a webinar on a topic linked to sustainability and the future of the METS sector. And following each of these webinars, each of the students will be allocated to a small group. There'll be about 5 students in each group, and you'll be provided with 2 METS sector professionals who will be your mentors. And in those small groups, we're going to have discussions after every webinar. So there'll be approximately an hour discussion. So all of the students who are attending today will receive an email in the next few days where we'll be introducing you to your mentors, and then we'll be arranging a time for us all to get together in these small groups and unpack some of the learnings that we got from today's webinar, and also begin to build connections and consider what this might mean for the broader future of the METS and the mining sector. We're hoping to do that after every webinar. And there'll also be opportunities for you to attend face-to-face networking sessions within your small groups, so that you can attend those and hopefully build your professional networks within the METS sector. So the second session in our mentoring program is going to take place at the end of January. And for everybody who's registered for the session here today, I'll automatically send you through more information closer to the date about that. And that session is going to be on the intelligent mine, and that will be investigating how technologies like automation and data analytics are really transforming the mining sector and enhancing both the sustainability and the efficiency of the processes within. So to start today, I'd like to invite Leonie from Sentient to provide you a bit of an overview of who Sentient are and also her own career journey. Thanks, Leonie.
Thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone. My name is Leonie Yan. As you can see on the screen there, I'm a guardian of Sentient, a value stream leader of our Mavi Solutions team. And my favourite title, I'm also the Minister of Fun, which I'll go into a little bit later on. But I thought, as we're talking about the importance of communities when it comes to fostering sustainable mining, but also a bit about career opportunities in the MET sector, I thought I could perhaps take you through my career journey to date, because I've been at Sentient for 11 years now, and so my career journey and Sentience is kind of quite largely intertwined. So who is Sentient? We are a METS company using visualizations to help build safe, smart, and community-driven mines. The phrase "a picture tells 1,000 words" almost sums up what we do at Sentient. Visuals are an incredibly powerful tool when it comes to teaching people, sharing information, and getting everyone on the same page. Humans are largely visual creatures, and we understand things we see 1,000 times better than what we read or hear. And then if we combine all of those three things together, then it only gets better. What's different about Sentient is that we use gaming technologies to create our visualizations, which makes them a little bit more interactive and immersive. So the same software and technology that's used to create video games like Fortnite and Minecraft, we use to take complex data and make it accessible to everyone, from the CEO to the newest graduate to local community members. And this is how we see our technology helping to create sustainable practices the most. When we're solving problems or making decisions or designing a new mine, if we can bring the community members, engineers, advisors, and executives, all with varying degrees of training or experience in the industry, along for the journey, then we can get them onto the same page, and that we just believe that breaks down barriers and it increases transparency for everyone. So me, when I left high school, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I had a few subjects that I was having fun in, but no real direction. And I definitely had no inkling of working in the mining or resources sector. So I ended up studying film and TV first. And I've gone on later to study international business and that sort of thing to help me in my role. But I ended up falling into 3D animation just because it came up as an elective as part of my course, and I just liked it. So I come from more of a creative background, and after working a few unrelated jobs to get some experience, I ended up finding Sentient, and I came on as a 3D artist and game designer. At that stage, we were a team of 6 people, I think, 1 manager and 5 game developers and artists. And it just so happened that Sentient's core group of customers were resource industry companies. So I found myself building 3D worlds, animating characters, doing everything I had learned during my arts course. But instead of making games or movies, I was using those skills to solve real world problems. And that's when I realized that was pretty cool. So our founder's original dream for Sentient was to build incredibly visual and powerful digital twins using gaming software. Put very simply, a digital twin is a virtual replica of a mine site or an offshore platform or even a factory that is connected to live data sources, allowing operators to see what's happening on site in real time, which is especially helpful in this day and age when a lot of operators are working remotely and they aren't actually on the ground seeing what's happening at the time. So there are a lot of different types of digital twins out in the world now, and organizations are discovering more and more use cases and benefits to these platforms as time goes on. But the main benefit we are seeing with our digital twins, or our digital interface, which is what we call ours, it's opening up the data to everyone and helping people to make faster and better decisions. So in my first 4 years at Sentient, we started working with learning and development teams as well. We were creating immersive and interactive training using gamification and technology like virtual reality, augmented reality, and we were taking topics like hazard awareness, emergency response, dangerous tasks, and we were changing them from typical, sometimes often boring online e-learning modules into more engaging and highly visual training experiences. After 13 years of that now, we have a lot of learnings to tell us that to keep people safe in the workplace, training that is engaging and takes a learn by doing approach like virtual reality is really effective. Down here. So yeah, after 4 years of working at Sentient as a 3D artist, I was still having a great time, but my mind had started to wander. I was starting to think about whether I was passionate enough about keeping that same sort of topic, that technical sort of development going, especially when all my nerdy game friends at work were going home and they'd be making their own games and upskilling in the same areas. And I just wanted to play hockey and go traveling. So that's what I did. I moved to Tokyo, Japan for a few years, where I learned a lot about myself and my values and what I wanted to do next, which was to come straight back to Sentient. But this time I came back in management. So I decided I loved the technology and how we could use it to solve real world problems, but also that I was more suited to working with clients and managing teams and helping Sentient be a sustainable business. So over the past 7 years of being back at Sentient, I've moved from leading one value stream to creating a new one, and have spent the last few years in the leadership team as a guardian. We're called the Guardians of the Sentient Galaxy. And I'm also the Minister of Fun, which means I play a big role in making sure everyone has fun in their job. So this is everyone in our team now. So we've gone from 6 to 35. We spend so much of our time at work, our lives at work, and I want to make sure that coming to the office in the morning isn't a chore, but something you at least in some way look forward to. And our developers usually study subjects like computer science or game design, and then graphic design as well. But we also have people from human resources, from accounting, engineering backgrounds, and management as well. So we now have a pretty varied and diverse group of people, and I'm happy to say that there are a bunch more females now than when I first started in the industry, so that's really cool. And now we've built more dedicated teams to each of our different value streams. The most recent value stream, which is the one that I manage, is called the Mavi Solutions team. And this team focuses on providing visualizations for stakeholder engagement. It started out by us building 3D maps of areas of the Pilbara where mining organisations were planning to build or operate new mines, and the aim was to support better informed decision making for the traditional owners during the approvals processes. They were able to actually see how the proposed mine design would impact the land in the future, rather than just having to imagine it or look at it on a 2D map on a desk or a PowerPoint presentation. So we I've gone up instead of down. And yeah, so now that same team has grown to include visualizations, including renewable energies, transmission lines, offshore facilities, to not only help the broader community understand what something will look like when it's up and running, but also to show them how the land might be rehabilitated after closure, or how risks will be mitigated along the way. We have a small team of programmers, artists, and videographers as well to help deliver our projects, and use technologies like our purpose-designed interactive maps, 3D and 2D animated videos, 360-degree drone footage capture, and virtual reality experiences as well. So, as the Mavi Solutions value stream leader, it's my responsibility to design the strategy for our products and services, to manage the sales and marketing efforts for our area, manage the team of developers, ensure our projects are running smoothly, and also to build relationships with our customers. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's one of the benefits of working in a small to medium company, I think, because you get to do so much more and you're always challenged and stimulated, and you get to touch everything rather than just doing one thing all the time, which I think is really fun. So that's my story and sentience. And even though I'm not a hugely goal-oriented person, I just kind of work hard at whatever I do and see what doors open up for me and then take them. I thought that I would share some of my general philosophies in life and work with you. The first one is to work hard, but not in the traditional sense. Work hard to make a positive work environment for yourself and for others, and hopefully the community as a whole. Play hard, because while personal development and having a purpose and a meaningful career is important to me, experiencing the world, having fun, and allowing myself time to be silly and creative is even more so. And not only that, the experience I gain from both life and work can filter through to improve each other in ways you may not have realized. And I've realized that over time, that as my values have changed in my personal life about sustainability and that sort of thing, that has come into my working life. And now I want to make sure that that's what I'm doing in my job as well. And I think the last one is just a famous proverb you may have heard, but a society grows great when people plant trees in whose shade they will never sit. So I think the last one I bring up because I think it's important when it comes to thinking about your career and how it fits with the idea of the community mind. It's about using the power of people and the community as a whole to drive innovation, change, and continuous improvement into the future, even when we aren't around anymore. So what the industry needs, or what I feel the industry needs, is young people like you, people who care and people who want to build community values into big businesses. Mining is here to stay, we need it, but you can use your skill and passion to make the change from the inside rather than on the outside. And working for a METS organisation is, in whatever sort of role you end up in, whether it's HR or management or whether it's in that technical development side, you can possibly provide, or it can possibly provide you a very different experience than it is to work with one of the tier 1 companies directly. So that's me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Leonie. I think that was a great overview of your career and also of what Sentient has been up to as well. I think it's really interesting to hear the journeys that everybody's been on and find out a little bit more about the changes and the things that can happen. I also think that every company should have a Ministry of Fun. I think that sounds amazing. So I'd like to now invite our second speaker, Jess from K2Fly, to provide us a little bit of an overview of her company and her journey as well, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, perfect. So my name is Jess. I'm the Industry Marketing Analyst at K2Fly. Next slide, please. Thank you. So a little bit about me first. So originally when I went to uni, I wanted to be something between an editor and a journalist at the time. So I had a lot of interest in politics and the economy. So I was leaning more towards journalism. After I finished uni 3 years later, I found the MET sector. So it was actually that degree that helped me get into this industry as a content writer and editor to start with. So I joined the MET sector not to be in the MET sector specifically, but to work for a company that I felt was making a difference. Growing up, you'd always hear about the negative impact on mining on the environment, and I saw the uplift of the green movement in this industry, so that was really interesting. I wanted to go into a company that was helping make the industry better, and the fact is, and although this is an unpopular opinion, we need mining. It's how we've been able to evolve as an economy, and it's how I'm able to talk to you right now. I believe that the MET sector can help make mining better. It can make it more sustainable, more transparent, more governed, and create accountability for these mining companies. So my first role in the MET sector was working for a company that delivered health and safety software to the industry. So we provided solutions for workforce logistics. That's things like flying people to and from sites safely, training them to be competent in their roles, managing the risk, and monitoring the environment. So it was at this job that I took quite an interest in software products and what they can do for people. So then K2Fly came along at a time when I was looking for a change and also a role progression, so it was perfect. So that's industry marketing analysis. So I really valued the work that K2Fly was doing, and they had such a strong focus on their purpose as well. So that purpose was to deliver solutions to a market to help companies better manage and govern their mineral and natural resources. So that's essentially everything above and below the ground, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. So my role currently is to create and maintain a digital presence for K2Fly. So that's the marketing side of it. Then I ensure our efforts are best aligned to the industries we serve and having the knowledge to support that. So I work really closely with, we call them our subject matter experts. So they're essentially industry experts who are qualified geologists, geoscientists, engineers, to determine prominent challenges and themes that are relevant and can be solved through our software. So K2Fly has been one of the best jobs I've had, and I'm not just saying that because I'll probably watch this afterwards, but I've learned so much in this role and I've grown both in my profession and as a person. So enough about me. So I'll talk about K2Fly now, if we can go to the next slide. But before I talk about our software, I just want to talk about our purpose a little bit. So we believe that all resources are precious and they must be governed appropriately to create accountability. So we have kind of two major themes for K2Fly, and that's disclosure and compliance. And we have a suite of solutions that address those challenges associated with these themes. So these solutions fit into two distinct suites for us. So if you can go to the next slide. So we call this the cube of destiny, and don't ask me why, because I don't know. But if we look at the lower half of the image, we've got mineral resource governance. So this shows the activities that deal with extracting minerals from the ground and ensuring that companies have the processes in place to manage them effectively. The top half, which is where I'm going to focus today, is natural resource governance. So this delivers certainty to those managing their land that their practices comply with industry standards. And this is all the way from discovering the mine site to closure and rehabilitation of that mine site. So going through the full mining life cycle. So resource governance is simply a makeup of these two elements. So it's the way that we think about designing our solutions and the path we take our customers on to help them ensure confidence in the material that they're disclosing to the public. This is either through industry standards or stock exchange listing rules or code compliance. So resource governance safeguards a company's reputation for those in and around its operational footprint. If you can go to the next slide. So this is the golden threads. This is something that was brought to us maybe a year ago. It's an industry term, but we kind of took it and made it our own. So we turned it into the resource governance golden thread. So it essentially says that if what's happening on the ground, which is shown in land and location at the bottom, is reflected in public disclosures, which is shown in compliance and conformance at the top, then companies can have confidence in their resource governance. So ensuring that they have proper operating practices in place. So delivering solutions that address key industry challenges effectively brings incredible value and builds great mutual trust with stakeholders. And as Leonie said, and as I'm sure Courtney will say as well, software is usually put in place to solve challenges that industries and people face. So I want to focus on two specific challenges in the industry that we kind of solve. So we can go to the next slide. So the first is tailings dams management. So for those of you that don't know, in the most simplest explanation of it, tailings is essentially the leftover materials or residue from the processing of mined minerals. Then a tailings storage facility or TSF or tailings dam, it's the structure that is put in place to contain and manage this tailings. So there is a key event that I think was the turning point for the way that tailings were managed. So the Brumadinho tailings disaster, which is what's photographed on this slide. So this occurred in January 2019, sorry. So a tailings dam in a Brazilian iron ore mine suffered a catastrophic failure. So this is often flooding, which is what happened here. So this disaster killed 272 people. It flattened entire villages and caused extensive damage to the environment. So the company that was responsible, I won't name them, was ordered to pay $7 billion in damages to the affected communities. So this incident was one of many that have occurred with tailings dams, but it was at this point that the community felt that they had enough of this, that companies need to be more accountable for their tailings and they need to manage them better. So after this incident, if we can go to the next slide, the ICMM, so the International Council of Mining and Metals, implemented the global industry standard on tailings management. So this is better known as the GISTM promise that's my last acronym of the day as well. So this was a response to community expectations for the industry to do better, to manage their tailings better so that incidents like Brimadona don't happen again. So a key component of the GISTM is to support the ongoing management and governance of a tailings facility, collaborate and meaningfully engage stakeholders to ensure that these events don't happen. So there's 6 topic areas which are pictured in that circle as part of the standard, and the first one focuses on people that are affected by failures in tailings. So there is now a process in place that is required to identify and address those that are most at risk from these potential failures. This is surrounding communities. Investors are a big part of this as well. So to demonstrate this respect, people are afforded opportunities to meaningfully engage in decisions that directly influence and affect them. So that's a big part of the standard, to engage with stakeholders. So if we can go to the next one. So then how we kind of play in this. So we have a solution called tailings management. So it ensures the safe monitoring of tailings to comply with industry standards, such as the GISTM. So it has the ability to protect the reputation and social license to operate. It improves stakeholder trust and safeguard against environmental and safety impacts. So this is done through a central repository, so data, which is usually brought together from different sources. So before people were using our system, they were typically using spreadsheets, File Manager, SharePoint, Outlook, any Microsoft product you can name, to manage this. But it didn't show the potential risk of failures or if there was changes in the land over time. So that's what our solution helps with. And then what it looks like, if we can go to the next slide. So this is a screenshot. Sorry, it's a bit blurry, but it's a screenshot from our product. So this is the stakeholder component, which is a critical component of the GISTM. So our tailing solution allows users to monitor all engagements, to track. So this one here is Mount Morgan High School, which is just an example. So that's the surrounding community area to the mine. So it monitors all engagements, provides certainty to all stakeholders, and then make sure that they are informed about the status and the progress of their active and inactive tailings facilities. Another key component of our solution is our newly developed health dashboard. Next slide. So this one here I actually helped design, so I'm quite proud of it. So the intention of this is to transparently convey the health of tailings storage facilities throughout the organisation. So a lot of mining companies have different mine sites across the globe. So this makes sure that they're at a corporate level, they're aware of what's happening at all the different mine sites with all their tailings. So in that map picture there, we've got red for, like, I guess, danger, high risk. Green is it's okay. And then between that, we've got moderate risk and low risk as well. So one of the key challenges identified in the Brimadona failure was communicating operational knowledge up to a corporate level. So this is what that dashboard tries to achieve. So it tries to roll up all that data so that everyone knows what's happening. Okay, the next one. So that's our tailings management solution. The next challenge I wanted to talk about is cultural heritage management. So this one here is a bit more sensitive, so I won't talk about it too much. But as an example, in May 2020, there was a tragic loss of significant heritage, which is photographed here. So this was Juukan Gorge. So it was a sacred rock shelter located in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. So you can research about this yourself if you want to know more. But it was claimed to contain a cultural sequence spanning over 40,000 years. So this was unfortunately destroyed. In the next slide. So in the case of Juukan Gorge, our heritage management solution delivers an effective, transparent land management process to ensure obligations are understood and risk is highlighted. So it tracks all progress with permits to disturb land, approvals to retain access to the land, approvals to conduct ground disturbance activities, and then also safeguarding sites of significance. Next slide. So I don't know if my GIF will work, but I'm hoping, yes, okay. So our solution can spatially, through Esri maps, assess areas of interest. So that means sites that you wish to conduct ground disturbance activities on. So it will superimpose layers that can highlight like exclusion zones, so areas you can't operate because there's restrictions either by legislation or jurisdictional restrictions. It shows communities that you can't, I guess, operate near or around, and it also highlights heritage sites as well to avoid disruption to that. It can also include business rules that are set out by internal subject matter experts as well. So as you can see through our solutions, we focus heavily on governed community inclusion and engagement, ensuring there is visibility for all stakeholders that are involved. I might wait for this to play, sorry, just to show you. So that's just the layers being superimposed on top to review sensitivities in this area. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, next slide. And there's the last slide. So if we are rating this back to the UN SDGs, I would like to focus on number 15, which is life on land. So I think all of you on the call would know a lot more about this than I do, so I won't go into it. But we address this UN SDG through ensuring that mining companies have an effective and defensible system in place to monitor their assets and engage with stakeholders on issues that directly impact them. So this is things like ensuring they're involved in the decision-making process for disturbance activities, for heritage site management, for land access permits and approvals, tailings monitoring and management, and then also progress with rehabilitation as well. So the industry needs to be accountable for better protecting the environment and prevent further damage or impact to biodiversity and environmentally sensitive areas. And I believe that the MET sector can give them the tools to help drive this. So I guess the MET sector is working as one unit towards this one goal of creating a better outcome for the earth. So that's why I joined the sector, and I think that's why you should too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess, and thank you for sharing your journey and the interesting journey of K2Fly as well. It was really interesting to see how some of these awful events have actually led to some very inspiring innovation within your company. I will just say to everybody, just before we move on to Courtney's presentation, after the presentations, we're going to be doing a panel discussion, and there is going to be an opportunity for you to ask some questions. So if something comes up while you're listening to these either the panel discussions or the presentations, and you actually have a question for one of our panelists, there's a Q&A down the bottom of your screens. Feel free at any time to pop a question into there, and we'll come round to those later on during the presentations, just so you don't have to hold on to that and remember it for the next half an hour or so. Okay, thank you. And Courtney, thank you.
Thanks, Claire. And look, I guess I want to start my presentation with saying, everyone here that's attending, you've made the first step in your career journey, and this could actually change your path. So, you know, both Leonie and Jess have reflected on why it was they joined the MET sector, and I guess I was kind of an accidental addition to this sector about 1.5 to 2 years ago. When I was at school, I wanted to be a veterinarian. Couldn't have ended up further from being a vet now. I went to uni and started studying vet science and hated it, hated every minute of it, wanted out immediately. Had a bit of a crisis and left that degree, and then actually started studying agribusiness. So I went out bush and started studying agriculture and trying to understand what's happening in rural, regional and remote communities. From that minute on, I was obsessed. And so when I say I'm accidental in MET, it truly is accidental, because my whole background and my whole life has been in agriculture and fostering the communities that contribute to rural industries. My role at Voconic is agriculture sector lead, and that effectively means that I provide a voice for rural, regional and remote communities, for organisations in METs to listen to and understand, to ensure that these communities are heard and both communities can work together for a productive and sustainable future. Once I finished my agribusiness degree, I did a bit of travelling, I did a bit of research, and I actually went back and became a teacher. So again, not at all METs. How the hell did I get here? I attended a careers night, and my now boss, Dr. Kieran Moffat, was talking about this company. I thought to myself, it perfectly aligns with my values. What Voconic does aligns with my values and really, really makes me have a bit of a zest for my job. You know, I want to show up to a job every day where I am smiling and I feel like I'm doing the right thing. And this is the first person I ever met that made me feel that way. So I just came to a career networking event similar to everyone here, and that's the thing that changed my entire career trajectory. I was in the classroom, I quit during COVID, was sick of it, and moved on into Voconic. And all of a sudden I was working in the middle of a remote community, interviewing people about a tailings dam. Knew nothing about the Met sector, but found it was incredibly welcoming. Everybody on site was ready to share their knowledge, and I learned so much in my first year at Voconic. So who is Voconic and what do we do? We're a social research company. We measure and work on improving trust between communities and the industries that operate with those communities. So not just mining, but also renewable energies and agriculture. But what we really do is we give a voice to communities and we help organisations that work with these communities better listen. We sprung off from the CSIRO about 10 years ago from a research bank that my boss, Dr. Kieran Moffat, was running. And we've become a global company since then, working across pretty much every continent in the world. And we've got over 200,000 data sets at last count about different communities and what makes them tick. So Jess mentioned social license a little bit earlier. So I think a lot of the time we kind of don't really understand what social license is, and Voconic is entirely operating in that social license space. So we define it as the level of acceptance or approval by communities and stakeholders of a company's business operations and projects in a given area. That is a mouthful. So put simply, we were in Indonesia recently because one of our clients had completely lost their social license. What did that look like? The community were blocking roads. They couldn't access that mine with trucks, cars, or by foot because they'd completely lost their social license to operate, and the community were reacting in such a critical way that they could no longer do their job, which was critical for the community's economic stability, but they got to a point where the community didn't care. So what Voconic does is put people at the center of these issues and really work to understand what it is that are making the people respond in that way, and giving the mining industry organisations and leaders information that helps them understand those reactions and hopefully come to a more sustainable conclusion and resolution, working together in things like accessibility, culture, health and wellbeing, surrounding, you name it, we're trying to measure it. So when we're kind of taking a step back and thinking about what sustainable change looks like and why Voconic is involved in this, and ultimately why I'm involved in this, this is just a Google snip of a random mine. As you can see, in the center, we've got a super pit. Around it, we've got mining operations. And directly next to it, we have community. Community that is not only directly impacted, but working every day with that mine. So that mining operation has a series of engagements that they work with their local community on. You can see there's even a sports field there. They're talking to that community, engaging with them as much as humanly possible. But they don't truly understand how they can minimize their impact and how they can minimize that impact over time to ensure that community is fostering a really sustainable relationship with the mine. If we take a step back and think about what's happening in that community. So the mine is probably, donating money for the local sports team and putting some, logos on their jerseys. They're probably putting people out and having cups of tea and getting engaged directly with that community. But what aren't they doing, and what are the long-term impacts for the community? We go in and measure and we seek to understand this. So I'd probably go into the ground and do some long-form interviews with community members in this particular area, and I'd find out things like, yeah, okay, there's dust mitigation measures in place, but what's still happening is my neighbour is getting compensated for that dust, but I am not. They're probably saying something like, yeah, somebody has come and explained to me what's happening in this mine, but it was in highly technical engineering terms because someone like Leonie's company hasn't been engaged. So I don't understand what it is that they're doing. And that really sucks. They might also say, hey, this mine has a huge FIFO component. So people are coming and going all the time, but they're not actually contributing to our local community. And that really sucks. And so what we do is work with that mine to help them not only measure, but understand what's happening in that community so they can create sustainable change moving forward. How do we do that? Lots of data. So like I said, we've got over 200,000 data points globally about different mining operations, energy operations, agricultural operations. And what we do is break that down to understand the key things that basically remove social license to operate. And that comes down to a key relation factor, which is trust. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. The data we've got on the screen is effectively two things that mines do, which is contact people quite a bit and then put some copy in that communication. So we measure both. So we measure contact quantity and contact quality. What I've got here is a particular other community, which I've highlighted in red. And as you can see, they've been contacted a lot. Somebody is hitting them up almost every day to tell them what's going on in the mine. But if you can see in the second graph, they're actually saying, well, the communication is really bad. That poor communication begins to erode trust in that community. And without the data to understand what those particular communities think, people will get left off. So think about it like this webinar. We've got a few people attending today and they'll get the opportunity to put in questions into a Q&A for us here. Some of you might be really confident and ready to ask questions and probably ask 100 questions. If we took that as the full data that represents the set of people that have come here today, we would be wrong, because there's people like myself that wouldn't be very comfortable asking a question and they'd probably sit back and observe. They might think later, oh, I should have asked that, and then they beat themselves up and feel like they can't come back and communicate. We've also got people that are going to watch this as a recording and they completely can't ask the question. These are the community members that we're trying to capture and understand to ensure that everybody gets a voice in the process. It's people with low literacy skills that maybe can't read or write in the best way to send a letter. It's people that maybe have 2 kids and can't attend a community forum. It's women that have been wholly underrepresented in the community, or as unfortunately Jess mentioned, it's cultural groups that need to share their voice about something that is planned to happen but do not have an avenue to. So we've got big data sets to help that occur, and it reduces inequalities for all. So what we do is boil this down to what we call a recipe for impact. So we use trust as a measure of relationship health. We score our organizations out of 5 on trust. If you've got high trust, it means you're operating well within that community. It means you're giving them quality contact. It means that you're acting within your environmental requirements. It means that you're listening and responding. And then trust is a key measure that leads to acceptance, which is what we use as a measure proxy for social license to operate. If acceptance is low, you've got people blocking roads. If acceptance is high, people will give you the benefit of the doubt and let you do things in your operation and innovate in the best way possible. We've got things on the left that we use as drivers for both trust and acceptance, and these are 3 that we commonly see in mining. The first is environmental responsibility. So let's take it back to that tailings dam example. Is the mine that is near your community doing the right thing in terms of that tailing dam? When I was talking to a bunch of landholders, what I was hearing over and over again for a particular mine was that, yes, they were following regulations, but what they didn't understand was that some of the soil leaching was actually ending up in their pasture, which was ending up in their cattle. And so a quick conversation between the mine and the scientists that were building the sides of that mine, or the engineers, allowed that issue to be abated. And we also put a buffering system in between with foliage. The next piece is procedural fairness. Are we listening and responding in a way that is appropriate for the community? Are we using technologies like Leonie's to explain to the community what it is that we are doing and then following through on that? And then finally, regulation. So Jess pulled out really good examples on regulation earlier. That is a key tenet of trust for communities. Do you trust that there is regulation in place and that the organisation is following through with those regulatory standards? All of these lead to trust and then ultimately lead to the social licence to operate for these mines. And we work to make sure that we're measuring this over time and not only holding the industry accountable for their actions, but also working with them to better understand the communities in which they operate. So I'll just leave this here with sort of a final comment, and it's basically that everybody is in this together. And without engaging with our communities in the appropriate way, we are really, as a sector, going to be left behind. And we have some great technologies, we have great innovators, and we have great people in the sector that are really bringing us along for the ride. So here we are, same example with the road blocking. We sent a couple of consultants over, and we pulled community members and cultural leaders into the room to have the conversation about why these road blockages were occurring. After we reviewed the data and we understood what was happening with the community, those blockages went from 7 times a year to just once, and that was resolved within a day. That fosters a much stronger relationship between the community and the organisation that impacts it directly, and we turn that negative impact into a positive impact. We worked to train the groups of people that worked around the mine. We worked to engage them in more meaningful jobs that existed at the mine, and we worked to explain what was happening at key points and why the roads would be busy at those specific times. And those small efforts made huge changes in the relationship between the organisation and their communities, ultimately leading to better trust and acceptance. So go away and think about who you should be having a conversation with and who you should be listening to in your career, and hopefully you learn to listen just like I did. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Courtney. And that was really a really fascinating insight into your own career. And I think both yourself and the other panelists involved have had an eclectic journey into the Met sector. I think it's true to say that no one really follows that straight career path that maybe we thought we were going to when we first started out at university. And also to hear more about Viconic and the voice that you're giving to community. So through all the presentations this morning, we've had a really great overview of technology, strategy, and people, and how innovations in these different areas that METS companies are using to really make a difference to community engagement, inclusivity, and more environmentally responsible mining. And what I wanted to do now is move on to a panel discussion with the 3 industry experts. And as I say, if anybody does have any questions at any time, you add those into the Q&A and we will come to those as well. Just to unpack this topic a little bit more and find out about how the MET sector more broadly is approaching that community mine issue. So to all of our panelists, the first question I wanted to ask you is how does your company approach or contribute to building a positive legacy in mining? And what do you think about the challenges or misconceptions about mining's environmental and social impact?
I could go first. Okay, so for us, we have a land rehabilitation solutions that's all about returning the land to its agreed post-mining land use. So I think it's, I guess it's naive to think that you can return the land to what it was pre-mining. So traditional owners and the mining company usually work together to return that land to an agreed state. So that's one aspect of it. Another thing that we do is we protect heritage. So we are working with a group that has strong ties to traditional owners. So we work with them to try and bring both the proponents and these traditional owners together to work on a better outcome for the industry. And then the last part of it for us is so stock exchange listing. So there are reporting codes that are required. So for Australia, it's the JORC code. So that's the Joint Ore Reserves Commission. So that is when companies are reporting to the stock exchange, they use this code as a guideline so that they can report their minerals they extracted from the ground. So a big part of that now is the ESG component. So they've just done a rewrite, and one of the proposed changes is that they have to put in the ESG factors. So they have to write, this is what's surrounding us, this is what we found, this is what we didn't find. So they have to list everything a part of ESG. And I think that comes from an investor point of view. I think investors now want to see what's actually happening with their money, that companies are using it like sustainably, I guess, and they're actually trying to make a difference instead of just disturbing the land. So I think with those 3 things, that's kind of how we play in leaving a positive legacy for the industry.
Thank you. Leonie?
Yeah, I suppose on our side, it kind of goes with our company purpose, and our vision, I guess, is to solve problems for industry. So like I was saying before, with the visualization, it's not just limited to one thing. It can help in all sorts of areas. So I guess we just try to design visualization layers that sit on top of existing data sets and that sort of thing. Like we would not compete with Jess and Courtney's businesses, we would add to it and just try and help with that understanding and getting everyone on the same page. Because I think for me in this area, the biggest thing to remember is that we're all people. The people, like, yes, we've got a business that sits there, but the people that run that business inside it, they're just like you and I. And you meet a lot of people in those businesses who do want to make change, and it's a struggle sometimes because you are fighting the economics of it and the business side of things, but they do want to see change, and I think that's happening more and more as time goes on and people are just demanding more change in general. So we just kind of work with them and go, right, what are your problems at the moment, or what do you see the business problems are, and how can our technology support that? And it's kind of like, okay, the values are changing, also the technology is getting better, so how can we put those things together and make a difference? And that's kind of our purpose, I guess.
And I guess from our perspective, I'm really focused on that word misconceptions. So we can think that the community is saying one thing, but that is a small subset of an entire community that is a collective of the loudest voices. So what we do is help identify what the actual thoughts and feelings of the people in a community are, and then help those running those organizations to identify what the most impactful strategies will be to help them move forward into the future. And so by using this data, it then allows them to make decisions that isn't about perceived misconceptions, but actual thoughts. And that leads to more sustainable change in response to community concerns.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think it's a really good point, Courtney, that there are many communities. So when we're thinking about community mining, we could be talking about the MET sector or the resources sector. We could be talking about the workforce, or we could be talking about the local communities as well. And everybody will have a different opinion and a different need from the mining in general. If you're thinking, Courtney, about say longer term positive legacies from mining, how is Voconics really, what have you brought into that? How have you improved that moving forward?
Yeah, so I think it's about understanding your data over time. So we're allowing these organizations to have access to long form data that justifies decisions and basically holds them accountable for those decisions. And we can see that over time, the impact that each of these decisions may be having on the organization, but also the community that it impacts. And so, part of it is about understanding those misconceptions or what the community is actually feeling. And then the other part is pulling it away and having a look at that data and seeing how a company is actually responding to those changes over time, and whether or not they actually are. That change in social license will allow the company to innovate more if they have a more robust acceptance score, and allow them to work more productively with that community, which leads to more sustainable relationships, but also reactivity to better social issues than probably previously assumed.
Thank you. And Jess, you showed us an example of your software there and how it's helping to showcase some of the community needs and some of the things that are happening within the area of the mines themselves. But how is that helping mining companies be more sustainable and make sure that their community feedback is actually actioned in a meaningful way?
So I think that it creates trust. So I think that their annual reports, which is one of the outputs of our system, is a big part of that. So if mining companies can accurately explain, this is what we extracted from the ground, and this is what we did this month or this year to try and rehabilitate the land, then I think that perceptions will start to change naturally. As I said before, land can never be returned to the way that it was post-mining. So I think as long as they're demonstrating how they're getting it back to that agreed land use after mining's finished, then I think that that will really bring together communities and investors and traditional owners as well. I think that a big thing for them is they just want to be informed. They want to be a part of the decision-making process, and they want to know the changes in these companies that are actually affecting them. So I think that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Having access to that information and being able to interpret it is really important. And Leonie, I know sentient software and some of the things that you showed us really help make information accessible to a wide range of stakeholders. How do you think that's really contributing to inclusivity and community involvement in the decision-making process?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it brings me back to that statement, that phrase of a picture tells 1,000 words. Just because, like, I think I can probably speak for everyone and say that at some point in your life, whether it's been in the classroom or a meeting or something like that, and if people are talking about it, something like a topic or a concept or a decision to be made, and you've missed some crucial piece of information just because you either don't have the training or it just wasn't clear, and it's nothing against you, but it kind of just makes you feel a bit silly and a bit stupid, and you shouldn't feel that way because it's generally not because of any lacking on your part. It's the communication that has been used within that meeting to make sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone understands, so that everyone can pitch into that decision. So I think that's where we've experienced it as well. And like, you know, I see it through the third party of working for the bigger companies when they're communicating with their traditional owner groups or their local communities and stuff, in that they have said that something that could generally take up to a week to discuss and get everyone to understand has been reduced down into like a day or half a day, because it's just like, cool, here it is. If you want to picture your mine or how the mine will look in 50 years time when you're no longer here, we can visualize it, and sure, it's all indicative, but it's there, and you can actually go, oh, okay, cool, that's what it's going to look like. And you might still have the same emotion you had before of it, where you might not like it or you do like it or whatever, but at least everybody goes, yeah, that is clear. We're all on the same page. Now I can take my thoughts and my emotions and my opinions and share them accurately and clearly, and get everyone to kind of compromise or collaborate in a good way from there.
Yeah, definitely. I think technology is really bridging that gap between those technical experts and community members and making information a lot more accessible. I just wonder if any of the other panelists, if you've experienced that firsthand, or you've seen the difference that technology is making to that community engagement.
Yeah, for us, definitely. So all of our solutions have that stakeholder aspect to it. So we always are trying to bring communities into that. So I think given the spatial aspect of our solution as well, being able to see the land, so visualize the land that they have ownership of, and then being able to share that with stakeholders, then I think, as well as the partnership I just mentioned earlier, having the other side of it. So for us, I guess we mostly sell to mining companies, whereas the partner that we have deals with traditional owners. So it kind of bridges that gap between the two of them to bring them more together, because I think at the moment they are quite separate. They've got different values, I think. So it really helps to bridge that gap, I guess, between those two.
And I mean, just to add to that, we often think of technology as these big shiny widgets, but technology is sort of evolving every day in a way that we could never have imagined. I mean, look at the growth of AI in the last 6 months and how it has changed people's workflows. So, you know, my job this week will probably not exist in 6 months, and it will look completely different. But when we think about engagement with community, realistically, the technology for us is unlocking that transparency factor and allowing a safe two-way conversation between the community and the organisations that work with them, in a way that we probably previously wouldn't have been able to do. And this is including reaching really remote communities and playing back that information to people in, you know, international centres in Canada, for example. And that transparency and the ability to track and the ability to show big data in a way that is digestible to the decision makers is just really key for us and making huge change for those communities.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of communities, we've talked about some of the other communities, but thinking about the workers, how is the technologies that your companies are using, how is that changing things for the actual workers on a site and making it safer for them and also making their job easier?
I think in our word, I suppose, as things change, the technologies that we have, we are learning how they can help in different ways. So we'll create something for one purpose, and then as time goes on and things evolve, like Courtney was saying, that technology moves so quickly that something you made 3 years ago could have a completely new purpose in this day. So I think for us, we see a lot in the safety of mines. So if people are working out on site, we know they can be a dangerous place at times, and the virtual reality and the really learn by doing training factors can help with that. So you get into a virtual reality headset and you can actually be on site before you get there, and you can run through your isolation procedure or a high voltage switching or something that can be a really dangerous procedure, but you can do it in VR as many times as you like until you feel really confident to go out on site and actually do it in person. I think, you're not going to get that same experience from a piece of paper or just someone standing up in front of you talking you through the process. So we see our stuff helping in that way. And then when it comes to automation and remote operations centres, we have all these people who are working down in Perth operating a mine up in the Pilbara or something, and they've never been there. So they're literally controlling a mine site and they've never even been there. But we put into a visualization that connects to the live data sources, and it just helps them to make better decisions on the ground in real time. So that's another way that we're helping, I suppose.
I think for us, as I said in my presentation, a lot of people using spreadsheets before they used our software. So there's obviously issues with version control and loss of data. And sometimes companies are managing like mineral resource data for like an entire site in one spreadsheet or across multiple different spreadsheets. So there was no real structure. So I think by having technology in place, it creates confidence in the data that you've got. Like you can stand behind the data because you know where it's come from and everyone can see it. So it's one source of truth. So for us, we've got like a series of workflows and processes within our system. So it goes through, for example, when they're capturing mineral resource data, it's captured by the competent person, so by the CP, and then that is like sent to their manager to sign off on, and then it's sent to someone else for approval. And then once it's completed that workflow, no one else can touch the data. So once it's been approved, it's locked in kind of thing. So no one else can make amendments, no one can lose the data or anything like that because it's all in the system. So I think that technology does create that confidence, and it also creates like visibility for everyone across site. And I guess having that transparency and having that single source of truth reduces risk. It reduces like risk of getting something wrong, risk of losing data. So yeah, I would say that.
I mean, informed decisions based on data is key for the people that we work with on site. But the other piece, and Jess, you just hit on it, risk reduction, but understanding that risk in a really tangible way. So what we've been working on quite a bit is benchmarking, because people seem to change their behavior a lot better when they understand how they're performing relative to other areas. And so that benchmarking for their site against other sites or against other industry levels not only gives them good examples of what to aspire to, but also allows them to understand that they're doing okay. Most of the time we work with community managers and people that are working on the ground. And those conversations can be really tough and often quite disheartening for those workers. And so going in equipped with additional knowledge to make an informed decision and knowing that the community is mostly on side with that decision is key, but also allowing yourself to benchmark against best practice and understand what that best practice looks like using the technology is just priceless.
Yeah, definitely. Understanding how things are changing over time and that benchmarking is really important. So when we're thinking about that, obviously mines go through a cycle. So we have from the start the way through to the rehabilitation. If we're thinking about when we're engaging with communities, Courtney, how have the partnerships that are built through your Voconic, how has that made an impact to that changing work that's happening on site?
Yeah, look, I mean, ideally you would say engage with your community as early as possible with as quality information as possible. That's really tricky in practice, right? Because you don't want to say we're building something here and then have absolutely no details for the community, because all it will do is stress a community out. So the measures that we have are helping to really identify not only when it is best to engage with the community on these particular issues, but also sort of being able to track the key issues as they appear for communities at different points in time. So, you know, when we're starting the operational line, people might be concerned about land access, noise, the size, the scope, the product, where people will be living. And that begins to evolve over time into things like environmental impact, and things like noise and dust. And then we move to closure, and there's other issues about, you know, what will be the biodiversity that we put in here? What will the land be used for? Is it accessible for communities? And keeping the finger on the pulse with that overtime data really does help us identify what is key and what is important, and how we can communicate with these communities to ensure their needs are met.
Yeah, definitely. And Jess, you mentioned that as part of the software for K2Fly, you can do reporting. So how is that technology making sure that companies improving their environmental reporting and also making them more accountable for that?
Yes, I think along the same lines. So as I mentioned before, that JORC code. So this code's been around since the 80s, but they've recently just done an update. So there's proposed changes, and for the first time, they've brought in ESG. So it's like ESG factors. So making sure that you're reporting on the land you're operating on instead of just what you're extracting. So I think given that it's obviously very prominent in the industry right now, if it's a part of the code. So and like I said, we've got two different suites. So both of our suites help with ESG reporting and bringing that to front of mind. So it tracks everything from the minerals you're taking out of the ground to what you're doing with the land after you're using it, and how you're managing like the actual usage of the land. So how you're managing your disturbance processes, how you're managing the heritage site that you have around, which all needs to be considered as part of this ESG reporting now. And I will just say I do have to drop off, unfortunately, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us, Jess. I will say to everybody, if anybody does have any questions specifically for Jess, if you want to share them with me, I will get back in touch with Jess, and then I can give you the answers before the small group discussion. So in those small group discussions, we will have an opportunity to unpack some of the things that we've talked about today in a little bit more detail. But thanks very much for joining us today, Jess.
Thank you very much.
Really
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
So we'll say Leonie and Courtney are going to be staying with us for a little bit longer. So we will continue the panel discussion. So we've talked a little bit about how changes have really occurred quite quickly. And we were saying like AI, for example, over the last few months. What exciting things are you looking forward to in the future? What do you think will be the next exciting, innovative change in your area?
I think the list is quite long and overwhelming. So, you know, I grew up on dial-up internet, so all of this is quite scary for me. What excites me about my job and seeing the new data capabilities, I guess there's sort of two things. The first is automation of tasks that nobody really likes to do. And so I'm finding that I get to do a lot more of the exciting components of my job more often and do a lot more decision making, even in the past 6 months than previously, because of new AI tools that we're testing. The second piece is just allowing for faster feedback with our clients. So, you know, being able to analyze our data quicker and get it out onto a platform, that's becoming more and more possible with not only AI, but we've created a data lake where everything is, and our code is getting better and better over time as our data scientists are getting more effective. And that's really exciting because we're hitting towards real-time community monitoring, and that is just truly incredible and will make a huge change to those in decision-making positions.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think about what will actually be, what I'm excited about specifically. I suppose in our company, that's what that kind of innovation style of the technology is, that we just like jump on whatever new tech comes out and see what we can do with it. So, I'm waiting for bigger companies like Meta and Apple and all these ones. Their Vision Pro headsets and stuff, that are like the VR headsets and the AR headsets are just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, until one day there'll be wearables like that are much, I guess, easier to use on mine sites and things like that, where, in the past we've already got that technology, but there's issues with dust and sunlight and all those fun things you get up in the Pilbara. So I think once we've kind of resolved those challenges and we start seeing more of this tech actually used out on site, it's going to be really cool to see how that's implemented. And I suppose on the other side of things is that as the renewable energies kind of comes into it, and how mine sites are still going to operate, but they're going to be operating it with zero emissions as best they can. I think to see how we can help with that and support that. And to me, it's going to be similar to what we're doing now. It's just in a different vein. And I'm quite excited about that, because it's just, it'll be really cool to be able to go, yep, we're mining to be able to solve these problems and build these computers and build the same tech that we are using to solve these problems, but we're doing it in a much more sustainable way that just jives with a lot of people's values better, and the earth, because we need that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some really exciting times ahead, and well, it's hard to tell, because I'm sure I wouldn't have imagined a year ago that we'd be using some of the things we're using now. It's all a bit Star Trek, but who knows where we'll be. But I think there's certainly some amazing opportunities, and some of the MET companies are there, and they are primed to take on that challenge of this new technology, exciting opportunities it brings. So I will just go very quickly to our Q&A. We've got a question in there. So when it comes to change management processes, which ones do you think you could implement when either disruptions occur within the community, say during a project? And then as a follow-up to that, have you identified any challenges that could benefit from an innovative solution, or that perhaps you need to foster more continuous community engagement? Or
Huge question. I'll start, and Leona, maybe you can finish me off. But we've seen, I think, recently a big issue in our LATAM businesses. So Latin America, we do a lot of work there. There's been a lot of political unrest, and that's probably where we've seen the most disruptions during projects occur for us, because we don't really work within the community unless we send out an advisory function. What we're doing is sending out people that are doing the research and then coming back to the company to work with them through the issues. So, we recently had an issue where the company we were working with had lost their social license to operate and had sent out some people to monitor what was going on. And we actually found that the community unrest was so bad that our researchers out on field were unsafe. So they were not being accepted by the community at all. So we had to rapidly understand that issue and then respond. And how we did that was going to the community leaders and the cultural leaders of that particular area and working with them to find a reasonable solution through seeking to get them to understand that we're just there to hear their voices, nothing more. When we work with our clients on identifying what those issues are, we build one of those trust models, so those path models I showed you on the screen, and it's on us to work with our clients on understanding what specific actions they can take within that model, and it's weighted based on the importance to the community. But realistically, it's our clients that have to identify those changes and create the management. We're there as consultants to facilitate that decision and help continue to reiterate that the community is important in whatever decision they're making. In terms of challenges that could benefit from innovative solutions, yeah, look, challenges in every area of our work. It's not cheap to send data collectors that are doing manual data collection out into remote, regional, rural communities, not only in Australia, but globally. Things like translation are really difficult. Things like accessibility are really, really difficult for us, not only in terms of whether or not they can read and comprehend the questions that we're asking, but also in terms of like whether or not we can access the physical site where we need to be community facing. So if anyone comes up with a solution to that, I'm all ears, and please do send me an email, because that would solve a lot of our problems.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to start with the second question, because that internet is one of the biggest challenges we have in working with any of our customers in remote communities and stuff. So it's one of the things we work on, or like struggle. I guess we work on it continuously, but we struggle to get something that's really, really good, because, you know, if you think about like just thinking about our stakeholder engagement product compared to something like Google, right? So you need internet to run Google, and as you zoom in on a map, the satellite imagery is updating so that every time you get to a new level, you're still getting like the same resolution, the same amount of pixels to have a good picture that you're looking at. When you're working without internet, you can't do that. So you can't dynamically load it unless it's all built into the thing, and then you'll have an application that's gigabytes in size. So you have an application that has to run in the desert basically, and have no internet, and you have to build that all into it. So it's a real challenge in that respect. So either having new technology that supports us to do those dynamic layering, or to have better internet in remote communities and stuff like that would really help. And having lived in Japan and experienced being in the middle of nowhere and having beautiful internet, it's very frustrating to me that Australia doesn't have that. But we'll get there, I'm sure, at some point. And then I think the other side of it was about challenges like during projects and stuff. For me, obviously I'm not on the front line with working with those customers or the communities and stuff out there. So I'm not there firsthand, but I suppose what I've experienced, and maybe more from an administrative economies sort of business side of things, is that the change in people. And I imagine Courtney deals with a lot of this as well, in that you have so many people that you're dealing with, and they're all very diverse. And their opinions will not only be very strong, but they'll sometimes change over time. And you'll have, say, traditional owner groups where someone will move on, and then you've got new leaders coming in, and they'll have different opinions to the last ones. And that's perfectly fine, but it does mean that you have to just be alive to the changes across the entire life of mine. So that I see as one of the biggest challenges. And from our side, we have the same issue when it comes to our customers, in that a big company, they often go through a lot of change in people. So it's not the same age where you stay in a company your whole life. You know, we move around a lot, and I think that's really great as well. It brings change and whatnot to companies and different opinions and that sort of thing. But what it does is that you'll be working with a really great team who are really excited by the tech, and they're implementing it, and then they'll get made redundant, and then new people come in or something, or they move to a different position because they're just moving on, and then you have to work to build new relationships and get that technology back into sort of a regular use. So you kind of see the end community suffering a bit, I guess, because they get used to a certain level of visualization technology, and then the next team comes in and they don't get it anymore. So yeah, that would be our biggest challenge, I think, is people and internet.
Yeah, definitely. And that dynamic process, both in terms of what's happening with the companies and what's happening with communities, it's something that we're never ever going to have the perfect solution, because when we think we've achieved it, something else might happen to change that. But having internet and having something stable so that we can at least have that ground to begin to have our foundations is really, really important. And I think it's also really important to recognize, while we're doing things much better than perhaps we've done in the past, that this is something that we're working towards, and there's so much opportunity for you all to contribute and make a difference and join in. And when we're thinking about that, I suppose what I wanted to come to Leonie and Courtney, ask you both about how your experiences with the Met sector and the community there, and what you found, if you could offer any career advice to students perhaps starting their career in this sector.
Yeah, Courtney, if you're happy for me to jump in. like I said, when I was doing my little talk, I had no idea I was getting into the med sector when I started. I thought I was going to be directing movies and animating, blah, blah, blah. But it's been a nice evolution that you find where what you are doing is really actually just helping people in the end. You know, we're helping companies, but in the end we're helping people, and that's really important to me, I guess. So that's been really nice. But also the Met sector in general is like, just having been involved with a lot of Osmine events and expos and all those things in the last, it's a really collaborative environment. So you kind of, you know, Voconic, I think I've heard of Voconic before. We might have even talked to them at some stage, and we meet and we talk and we go, how can our technologies work together to solve the problem rather than competing, like I was saying earlier. And you meet a lot of different companies like that, where they're designing something because they've seen a problem that they want to solve, and then they don't look at you like a competitor, they look at you like, cool, how can we do this together to just solve that problem? So I find that part of it really nice.
Yeah, so also accidental that I'm here, and I think my takeaways were that I was in it and I didn't know I was in it until I was really conscious that I was in it, and took some time to reflect and go, oh, actually, two of my biggest mentors for my career are METS people. And when I put my agriculture hat on, which I do probably 50% of the time, we often look up to the MET sector for innovations to make our work better. So, you know, it was always all around me, but I just wasn't conscious of the opportunities and the cool things going on in the sector. I guess if I was to give anyone sort of career advice or how to approach opportunities, always just ask questions. And, you know, I got my job from something like this. So engage as much as you can with every single opportunity and use the experience to listen and understand, and you really will not go wrong.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. And just to acknowledge again that everybody who's on the call today, you've made that first step. I know that it can be quite nerve-wracking. I personally only rejoined the Met sector a year and a half ago, and I've really found it to be a very welcoming environment. But I understand that it can be quite overwhelming when you're first forming those professional relationships. And hopefully through your small discussion groups and through your mentors, you'll find that safe space where it can be your springboard into industry, and then who knows what will happen next. So we do have another question as well in the chat here. Just wondering about collaboration. So the question itself asks about potential things like collaborating with satellite imagery companies, but I'm just going to expand on that a bit more and think about how maybe collaborating with either mining companies or communities, or with broader ideas from other sectors, how that could actually help shape a more sustainable future for mining.
Yeah, absolutely. It's for me, yeah, I try to just do it on a daily basis when I'm working with my teams. You know, they're all unbelievably sort of smart, like innovative, kind of creative thinkers, and they get in there and they go, okay, cool, can you go and do this? And they go and do it, and they're great. Their idea might be absolutely fantastic, and they go away and do it, but nothing works better than if they actually stop, go, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to go run this past someone else. So they get into a room, they chat about it, or maybe sometimes because they're introverts, I force them into a room and they hate it. But the discussions that come out of it they're so robust and like exciting, especially when we're working with this new tech. It's kind of, you never know what they're going to come up with and how they're going to challenge each other, and go, just kind of ask those questions. Is that possible? So everyone might go, I got no idea. But then by the end of it, they may find out that it doesn't work, and that's fine. But then most times they come up with some new solution or new way of doing things that just suits the customer that we're working with, or suits the problem we're trying to solve. So I can't speak more highly of just when you have an idea, or someone has an idea, of talking to someone else and seeing, even if you had the same idea, you might have thought about it or gone about it a slightly different way, and it can just it can boost the efficiency of it, the effectiveness of it, and all that. So collaboration is huge, and I think that the Met sector is really good at it.
I mean, nothing really to add. Exactly the same with us. We love to challenge each other. And I think at Voconic, I've never worked at a company before like this, where I walk into a room and I know I'm the dumbest person in the room. Everyone around me is just brilliant. They're so intelligent. They're so ready to change. We also adopt realistically agile methodologies, which, you know, tech. So working in sprints and working to solve problems together is the only way that we will get stuff done, but also considering the fact that we actually work in a collaborative nature with our clients and with the community. So always putting collaboration sort of front and center is part of our company's ethos, and it's incredibly important, not only to have impact, but also to ensure that we're meeting the needs of everybody that we're servicing.
Yeah, thank you. That is really important. Leonie, did you have anything else?
I only just remembered about the satellite imagery mentioned earlier in the question. My answer is yes. It's kind of, I guess we have our specialties that we work on and that we can do, but for us, you know, there's no point in us going away and creating a new way to collect and process satellite imagery and stuff like that. So we would rather work with a company that already does that and then have that and find a way to build that into our own system. So the software, the big range of software that we use already shows how much we do that, you know. So just kind of, you don't want to go and reinvent the wheel. If somebody's doing it better than you, then let them do that and try and mix it in together to solve the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that's also something that K2Fly, so Jess's company, are very much involved in GIS surveys and imagery. So I'll also put the question that we have here in the chat to Jess, and I'll share the answer to everybody. So the question was quite specific about small-scale satellite imagery and how we might tackle challenges there to collaborate with companies who are doing that, so that we're not essentially remaking the wheel. So I'll share that with Jess and we'll try and get a better answer for you on that. I wondered if anyone else had any questions, if you want to add them into the chat. And while we're doing that, Leonie and Courtney, did you have anything else that you think we've maybe not covered that really is important to creating that more sustainable, community-focused mine that we're all aiming towards in the future?
I think the only thing, I think it may have been touched on at some point, but the only thing I wanted to reiterate, I suppose, is that doing it, making the change from the inside rather than the outside. And I guess the Mets is kind of, you're in, but not so in that it's uncomfortable, maybe. I don't know. But I think that we have a lot of change in the industry happening because of demand from community and the public in general and the earth in general. So that's really, really good. And obviously that is inspiring and requiring change from these companies. But I think, you know, if these big companies or these Mets companies only have people who are thinking about the mining and thinking about the business, then they're not going to change. They're going to do it as much. They might just tick the boxes and go on. But if we, as people who care, and I think that especially goes for women, we have that point of view, like just innately in our bodies, I think, and not to say that men can't have it as well, but it's just, if the more of us that are in the industry and changing it from the inside, I think the quicker it will happen than it is if we're all tackling from the outside, I guess.
I think the only other comment I would make is basically one that is, you know, the industry is changing and the role of gender in the industry is changing as well. There are still challenges though, and so groups to support you throughout your career are incredibly important. But so is backing yourself and building those skills. So, you know, in my job, it's all about having the data to back up the decision I'm making and to show decision makers why that is the best decision. But it's a good way to operate in general, especially as a woman. Just back yourself and show people why. and have a group of people that you can discuss it with after if it doesn't go the way that you're expecting. You do need grit in any industry, and having a support system is totally key.
Yeah, absolutely. That support system is what makes a big difference. Having those people that you can actually bounce your ideas off and really get some perspective. I think it's like we were saying, when you're working with other people and sharing those ideas, a problem shared is a problem halved, and the different perspectives that everybody will bring to the conversation, just like we're finding when we're talking about things with the community and mining, that as we get these different perspectives in, we can do things better and we can make a more sustainable choices. When it comes to your own career, having other people there who can help advise you, they might be your peers, they might be experienced people within industry, and they might work within your company, but also, more importantly, people within the broader sector will help you really gain that perspective and make a big difference. And that's what we're hoping with the Women in METS initiative, that we can provide you with your own little soundboard and your own little community and safe space to really begin to grow within the sector. So with that in mind, I can see we've not got any more questions at the moment. If anyone does think of one before the end of today, then either add them in here now before we end the webinar, or if you want to send them through to me after this, I'll share my email address in a moment, and we'll put the questions to the panel, and I'll show you their responses before you get to your small group discussion for the next week or so. So here up on the screen at the moment are two important information. So the first one is a link to the Accelerating Women in METS student page, where you can find out more about the events that are happening over the next few months, those networking events that I talked about. You can also find links to our internships. We do still have a few of those open at the moment. And there's also a link there to our Women in METS LinkedIn group. So as we said, community is really important, and that is the community of students and people working more broadly within the METS sector, both women and advocates for us within the sector. And it's a safe space for you to ask questions, share information about your journey. If you have an achievement, share it. We're not, as women, really great about shouting about the things we've done really well. And I think the more we can share and support each other, if you put something on there about one of your achievements, I guarantee I will like it, and I'm sure many others will too. It's all about finding out about the different opportunities. So please do go on and join our Women in METS LinkedIn group. And you can also see up on the screen there as well, the STEM@osmine email address. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you suddenly think of that question that you wish you'd asked, I'm sure it's not just me that does that. When that comes up, then please do send it through. I won't reply at 3 in the morning, but I will see it tomorrow, and then I will get you a response as quickly as possible. So thank you so much to our panelists who attended today. Your insights have really been very inspirational, both about your personal journeys, but also finding out about your companies and the innovative products that you have that are making a real difference to the mining and to the communities out there today. And thank you to all of our people who've attended today. And I look forward to sending through the information soon about those small group sessions. Thanks, everybody.